Good evening, everyone. At 6 p.m, I declare this agenda forum open and say Kaya Wanju Mali Budja. Welcome to Swan Country as we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we meet tonight of the Whadjuk Noongar people and pay their respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Item 2 is the disclaimer. Agenda forums are specifically for agenda items which are to be considered by Council at the next ordinary meeting. Agenda forums are not a decision-making forum. They provide an opportunity for councillors to be equally informed, seek additional information on matters prior to the presentation of such matters at the next ordinary meeting of Council for formal consideration and decision. Please note that this meeting is being live-streamed. The recording will also be archived and made available on the Council's website after the meeting. If you choose to participate in the meeting during public question time and deputation time, is it assumed that your consent is given for the audio to be recorded? Please keep your comments respectful to councillors, other members of the community and staff, and visual images of the public will not be captured. I welcome all councillors, staff, members in the public gallery and those watching on the live stream. Attendance and apologies. On leave of absence we have Councillor Predovnik, Councillor Scanlon, Councillor Richardson, and I have apologies from Councillor Bailey, Councillor Jones and Councillor Kiley. Item 4, declarations of financial or proximity interests and interests affecting impartiality. And item 4.3, I'll just ask if there's any interest to be declared, councillors. Item 4.3, is it okay? I'll let the CEO read those interests out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I have a declaration of interest from Councillor Congerton. It's in relation to item 4.3, which is the Responsible Authority report for proposed roadhouse lot 159, number 1769 Neves Road, Bullsbrook. That is an impartiality interest as dynamic planning has worked for one of the councillor's businesses. Also a interest in relation to item 4.5, which is the proposed shop building lot 3 strata lot 1 number 53 the Crescent Midland. It's an impartiality interest and dynamic planning has worked for one of my businesses. Also declarations from Councillor Johnson. It's in relation to item 4.4, which is the proposed educational establishment private primary school lot 13 Stirling Crescent, Hazelmere. That is an impartiality interest. The architect is Patrick Irwin, who is a friend, a fellow member of the Gilderton Association and also attends the same church. Item 4.6 is also a declaration of interest to amend the aspects of DA 41419 to include solar panels to 2 sheds, lot 6, number 26, lot 151, number 28 and lot 350, number 30 Swan Street East, and lot 22, number 53 East Street, Guildford. And that is a proximity interest as I live at 29 Swan Street East, which is directly opposite. Also a declaration of interest from Councillor Zanino. It's in relation to item 4.5, the proposed shop building, lot 3, strata lot 1, number 53, the Crescent Midland. That's an impartiality interest as previous partners own land on the Crescent Midland.
Thank you. Are there any others, councillors? Then under item or part 4.3 of the city's election caretaker revision, the policy states, for the purpose of transparency and for the benefit of the public gallery, candidates are requested to identify themselves as an election candidate prior to asking questions or making a statement at a briefing session, agenda forum or council meeting or committee meeting. The following candidates are here tonight. It's Councillor Catalano, candidate for the Altone ward, Councillor Zanino, a candidate for the Swan Valley Gidgegannup ward, and other candidates will be mentioned at next week's meeting. As the presiding member, I've identified these councillors at the commencement of the meeting, and they do not have to now declare every time they wish to speak or ask a question at tonight's meeting, as I've addressed that issue now. Item 5, public question time. Questions relating to reports contained in the agenda. 5.1, questions of which notice have been given. There is nil. 5.2, questions without notice. Are there any member in the public gallery wishes to ask a question without notice on an item on the agenda? Being nil, I move to item 6, reports and motions of which previous notice has been given. And 6.1, deputations. And in accordance with the procedures for public participation at agenda forums, all requests for in-person deputations and the submission of written deputations were required by 3 p.m. Tuesday the 14th of September. All written deputations received by 4 p.m. Tuesday 14th of September were circulated with the preliminary agenda on Tuesday evening. There is nil to be carried over in Part A of the agenda. And Part B, the first item is item 4.2, amendment to LPS number 17 to rezone lot 189 and lot 190 Adelaide Street, Hazelmere, general rural to light industrial with restricted use overlay, and part of lot 190 reserved to a local road. It's on page 73, councillors, and I have an in-person deputation from Mr Aaron Lohman from Element, the applicant, in support of the recommendation conditionally. Mr Lohman, once you start speaking, you'll have 5 minutes, and I'll try and tell you when you have a minute left. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to speak tonight. We'll keep this very brief. I've been asked to support the officer's recommendation tonight by the owner of lot 190 Adelaide Street in Hazelmere. The amendment has been some time coming in terms of the development of the land with the original Hazelmere Enterprise Area Structure Plan being endorsed in 2011. And then more recently, the MRS amendment proceeding to Urban in May 2020. We'd just like to thank the officers and for the recommendation of support. We're happy with the modifications suggested by the officers, and we would be very keen to see council support the recommendation. There is one further written deputation on the site, which relates to the site from Mr Steve Robinson from Activate Projects. We have no objections to that for the sake of clarity, and I thank councillors for their time. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions, councillors? Then I thank you, Mr Lohman, for your deputation. Councillors, you would have received a written deputation from Mr Steve Robinson on behalf of the owners in support of the recommendation, but requesting an amendment to one condition. The next item on the agenda is item 4.3, Responsible Authority Report, Proposed Roadhouse, Lot 159, Neves Road, Bullsbrook. It's on page 96 of the agenda. And there's an in-person deputation from Mrs Anne Janes. Thank you, Mrs Janes. You'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Deputy Mayor, councillors and City of Swan staff. My name is Anne Janes, and I thank you for the opportunity to present this deputation on behalf of the Bullsbrook Residents and Ratepayers Association Incorporated with regards to DA 51/2021. Proposed Roadhouse, Lot 159, Neves Road, Bullsbrook. BRA objects to the staff recommendation in the report to approve the proposal. Whilst many of the points raised in the original objection by BRA have been addressed, such as correct zoning, building design, illegal clearance of native vegetation, plus any further removal of native vegetation and road safety, there is still a serious concern with regards to the impacts of the proposal to this environmentally sensitive area. In particular, risk of pollution to the groundwater system and protection of the Ellenbrook integrated catchment. We firstly note that prior to a building permit being issued, the owner applicant must prepare and have approved an integrated water management plan to the satisfaction of the City of Swan on the advice of DBCA. The City of Swan still acknowledges that there is a real risk of contamination to groundwater from the on-site disposal of wastewater and surface water runoff and stormwater disposal from this development. For this reason, DBCA has stated that an integrated water management plan should be prepared by the owner applicant. My first question must be, how can the City of Swan Planning Department and Council actually recommend approval for this development without first being totally confident that said recommended integrated water management plan will be adequate to mitigate all possible risk associated with pollutants from the site? There is a lack of clarity as to what the integrated water management report should contain. The extreme sensitivity of this area in relation to protection of the Nangara water mound, plus future pollution of the Swan River, directs the Bullsbrook Residents and Ratepayers Association to continue to highlight that there is an unacceptable risk to proceed further. Any contaminants from surface and groundwater will flow from west to east and will end up in the Ellen Brook. The state government, through DBCA, already spends millions of dollars in trying to prevent further nutrient and pollution levels from entering the Swan River via the Ellen Brook. The cumulative effects of all planning approvals in the Bullsbrook area is not being taken into account by local or state government agencies, and the Ellen Brook will be consistently under serious threat if developments with the real potential to pollute are continually approved without total consideration for the environment. There are already many service stations in the area. Do we really need another one? Is this a question of putting economic gain at any cost ahead of prudent environmental management? I would also like to ask, A, how the City of Swan intends to police the measure the rate of pollutants which may contaminate the environment in the future, and B, what will be the baseline indicator used to assess any pollutants before and after construction and operation of the site. The Department of Health has also cited concerns about the capacity of the site to manage on-site sewage disposal, particularly due to the high water table. Most of us would have witnessed the very high water levels during the recent winter rains and was clearly evident in the surface water located around the adjacent Berry Sweet Strawberry Farm.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
As all will be aware of the groundwater issues that already exist in the West Bullsbrook area. Does the Bullsbrook community, particularly West Bullsbrook, deserve to be faced with another environmental situation which could seriously affect their health via precious groundwater supplies? There is still no proper resolution from the federal government with regards to the current PFAS pollution. Once again, I reiterate that it is our belief that the risks are too strong to allow this proposal to go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. It was almost perfect timing. You had about 10 seconds left. Councillor, is there any questions of Ms Janes? Mrs Janes? Councillor Johnson?
Question of staff.
No questions for Mrs Janes. Councillor Henderson, staff. Thank you for your deputation. We've got 2 more deputation on this item. We'll take those deputations and we'll ask staff questions. The next speaker is Mr Richard Janes, Chairperson of the Ellen Brook Integrated Catchment Group and Chairperson of the North Swan Land Conservation District Committee. Against the recommendation, Mr Janes, you'll also have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Good evening, Mr Edwards, councillors and City of Swan staff. My name is Richard Janes, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to make this deputation on behalf of the Ellen Brockman Integrated Catchment Group and the Chairperson of the North Swan Land Conservation District Committee. EBIG and North Swan strongly object to the proposed roadhouse at Lot 159, Neves Road, Bullsbrook. Rosanna Hindmarsh, the Executive Officer at the Chittering Landcare Centre, was unable to be here this evening. However, she has submitted a written deputation together with her original objection to this roadhouse proposal, and I urge all councillors to read it. Her submission contains a near-map attachment, which is a view of the site, Lot 159, which was taken in 2009. If you look at that as the attachment that Rosanna Hindmarsh has sent through, you will see that the 2009 photograph depicts a lush wetland and significant areas of native vegetation. An application to clear the site for purposes of horticulture was refused by the then Department of the Environment and Conservation. That was DEC, it's now DBCA. One of the key principles is native vegetation should not be cleared if the clearing of the vegetation is likely to cause appreciable land degradation. This proposal is seriously at variance to this principle. The removal of vegetation from the area has been identified as having a very high to extreme risk of eutrophication, which is the increase in nutrients into the wetland from any fertilisers that are used in the horticulture, and a high risk of land degradation in the form of waterlogging. The application to clear was refused. In the second photograph on the near map page, you will note that there is a distinct lack of native vegetation and the lack of a wetland. This is as a result of illegal clearing and filling of the wetland. It's simple. No wetland, no increase in nutrients or waterlogging. With regard to the current application to construct a roadhouse petrol station on this site, there is a grave concern relating to the potential for groundwater contamination. In fact, it is noted in the City of Swan report that city staff acknowledge there is a real risk of contamination to groundwater from the on-site disposal of wastewater and surface water runoff from areas around petrol bowsers and refuelling bays where petrol and other hydrocarbons are likely to spill. Also, the site is located within a sewerage-sensitive area under the government sewerage policy of 2019, as it is located within 1 kilometre of significant wetlands and within an estuary catchment of the Swan Coastal Plain, that being the Ellenbrook catchment. Under the government sewerage policy, on-site sewage disposal should only be supported where it would not pose an unacceptable risk to public health, the environment, or water resources. The Department of Health cited concerns about the capacity of the site to manage on-site sewage disposal.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
Particularly due to the high water table. Finally, to achieve the construction of this roadhouse, the remaining native vegetation will need to be cleared. This really is adding insult to injury after the previous illegal clearing that took place. I urge the councillors to reject this proposal on the grounds of the strong potential to contaminate the groundwater which flows into the Ellenbrook and then the Swan River. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr Janes, councillors? No, I thank you for attending in your deputation. And the last in-person deputation on this item is Mr Regan Cake from Dynamic Planning in support of the proposal. Thank you, Mr Cake, and you have 5 minutes also. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors. My name is Regan Cake from Dynamic Planning and Developments, and we are here to speak in support of the proposed roadhouse at 1769 Neves Road in Bullsbrook. It is worth noting that our client, Sanzoni nominees, have a contract to lease and develop a portion of the subject site, which is the subject of this application. As such, we do not act on behalf of the landowner. Firstly, we wish to thank the City's officers for their fair and thorough assessment of the proposed application. We're appreciative of the support of the officers' recommendation for approval, which we hope is adopted by Council at next week's Council meeting. Through our deputation tonight, we intend to address some of the key matters in the assessment of the proposed application, the submissions lodged as part of the advertising period, and also the conditions of approval. It is hoped that through this deputation and a technical note submitted ahead of tonight's meeting, we're able to achieve a resolution that modifies 2 of the proposed conditions of approval, specifically Condition 7A and 9A. The first issue we wish to touch on relates to the proposed drive-through facility. It is acknowledged that Clause 3.3.17 of Development Control Policy 1.10 prohibits drive-through facilities associated with takeaway foods. However, it is considered that this provision relates more to the traditional takeaway food outlets such as McDonald's, KFC or Red Rooster, among others, which often rely on the drive-through component or side of their business. Within the proposed development, the drive-through component is simply incidental to the convenience store and not related to a takeaway food outlet. Further, the requirement for rest and a break for driving within Development Control Policy 1.10 is also acknowledged, with the development providing the opportunity for seating within the convenience store, which will allow patrons to rest should they consider it necessary. Further, as the residential and employment population grows in this area, it is envisaged that the development will predominantly service locals without the need for a rest. Other matters that were raised by the City's officers during the assessment process, and also several community interest groups through submissions of objection and also deputations tonight, included potential groundwater contamination, stormwater disposal, effluent disposal and land use conflict. Most of these issues have been addressed in detail within the officer's report. However, we simply want to convey to councillors that we have the relevant experts working through these issues and consider that the proposed solutions effectively address the concerns raised, which is also supported through the support of other relevant government bodies being DBCA, the Department of Health and DEWA. In addition to this preliminary support, there is also an added layer of protection through the proposed conditions of approval that require subsequent approvals to be obtained for stormwater and effluent disposal, which will ensure the groundwater and Allen Brook will not be impacted. Without these subsequent approvals, confirming the proposed stormwater management and effluent treatment and disposal is sufficient, planning approvals can simply not be implemented. With regard to the proposed conditions of approval, we are comfortable with all conditions except Condition 7A and 9A. Condition 7A requires the retention or relocation of existing vegetation. Where the development is located on the site, the vegetation will need to be removed to accommodate the proposed development. We have sought preliminary advice from an environmental consultant which has suggested that the vegetation is highly degraded and as such is of little value, and consequently we do not consider it viable to retain or relocate this. However, we do acknowledge and accept the requirement to obtain a building permit as part of the implementation of the approval should it be granted. With this in mind, we request that Condition 7A be deleted. Condition 9A seeks to remove the drive-through component of the development. In line with my earlier comments, we consider that the drive-through to be appropriate for approval as an incidental element, and as such request that Condition 9A be removed. In conclusion, we again want to reiterate that we are supportive of the proposed officer recommendation for approval and are simply seeking 2 minor amendments to the proposed conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr Cate? Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. What kind of vegetation are you going to remove or proposing to remove?
The environmental consultant did have a look. It was picked up as part of a flora and fauna vegetation survey that was done as part of the Northlink project. The species that were referred to was, excuse the pronunciation, Corymbia caphrophylla, and Melaleuca presiana, sort of mid-trees or mid-shrubland is the name of the vegetation.
And how much of the site are there currently vegetation on that site?
I wouldn't be sure on an exact percentage, but I would suggest around 20%.
Okay. And why is it that you have to remove it?
Contractually, the agreement with the owner and our client, Sanzoni Nominees, is that they've been, I guess, allocated a portion of the site to lease, and where that lease portion exists is where the vegetation and proposed development is proposed to be located.
But that lease portion can't be relocated anywhere else on the site?
Not according to the landowner, no.
Why is that?
I'm not privy to the commercial negotiations.
Okay, it'd be really good to know why that is, because, why? I mean, if it can be relocated and some of this vegetation can be retained, then that's a win-win for the environment, and you also get your development.
Yep.
So, I mean, if you can send me some more information, I'd be happy to receive it.
Yeah, I'm happy to follow that up
Thank
with the client.
Cheers.
Any other questions of Mr Cate? Then I thank you for your deputation for attending. You'll note that there's 2 further written deputations on that item. And Councillor Johnson, you had a question of staff.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. My question is about the integrated water management plan, and obviously this has not been developed. How will this, is this going to be a public document, and if not, how could it be made a public document?
Mr Russell?
Through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, it's a condition of approval, and the condition, I'll read it here. So it has to be, the plan has to be to our satisfaction. It would be in consultation with the relevant pertinent environmental agencies. We've got to remember that the Council's making a recommendation to the JDAP. The JDAP resolves to support the application with such a condition. I suppose it's possible for the Council, in making its recommendation, to indicate that it would like to have the document available for public inspection as an intent. Or the Council could, through Mr Deputy Mayor, the Council could seek to make a recommendation that alters the condition to the effect of the plan being to the satisfaction of the City of Swan on advice from Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions, Department of Water Environment Regulations, and it could include any other entity that it sees fit inclusive of the catchment group. So it's up to the Council, in making its recommendation, to decide whether it wants to broaden the consultation arrangement on the water management, the integrated water management plan, to include perhaps other agencies or other public groups.
Further question?
Yeah, just to follow on from that, when previously we've had an important plan like this, and it's been totally within the control of this council to approve it, I've inserted an amendment to the officer recommendation to bring, I think it was a building permit, once granted, to be published in the agenda, in the public agenda, so it could be on the public record. And obviously this is a JDAP matter. So I guess there are two options here. Could we make a recommendation that the JDAP include the integrated water management plan once it has been developed as an item in their agenda for noting, so it becomes part of the public record? Or would it be better to include it in our agenda for noting so that it's part of the public record?
Well, I think there's two ways to do it. Speak with the planning staff during the week, see if they'll make that part of their recommendation, or you can move a motion to that effect and it be adopted by council if it is.
Yeah, I understand that. I can do that. But the question is, which is the best way to do it? Is it to request the JDAP to publish it, or should the city publish it in our agenda?
Mr Russell, have you got any comment on that?
I do. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. The JDAP won't see any of this stuff. If it removes this and the conditions are to the satisfaction of the City of Swan, that will be the last the JDAP hears of it and becomes involved with it. So it would be the latter option, Mr Deputy Mayor. The Council wishes to have it available. It ought to make the appropriate recommendations or resolutions to that effect.
You satisfied with that answer?
Yeah, that's an excellent
Johnson?
answer. I'll be moving an amendment along those lines.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Henderson, you also indicated a question.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr Russell, in respect of the Integrated Water Catchment Management Plan, should one be attained and an ultimate approval, what is the ongoing and long-term management plan around that? So in 10 years' time or whatever, might have some deterioration in catchment or the like, or damage to the water management systems. What do we have to be able to sustain a long-term viability in terms of the catchment plan?
Through Mr Deputy Mayor, you can have management plans that require certain things to be done and to operate and to achieve certain criteria, and they can be expressed in terms of limiting volumes of discharge of waste or storm water and regulating the water quality of the water discharge, whether it's the wastewater or the stormwater. Now, if those are articulated in terms of standards that a development must meet, then those apply effectively in perpetuity for the life of the development. Now, it may require, again, similar to the question of Councillor Johnson, it might require, if that's the Council's express intent in making a recommendation to the JDAP, that it looks at maybe modifications to that condition to outline those requirements to maybe have reporting as part of the management plan and performance criteria. The general condition is basically you set a criteria for water quality and quantity management, and then you're required to ensure the development complies with that. And you've got to, as long as the development operates, you've got to maintain compliance with that condition. So it's an ongoing arrangement. It depends on the specificity that you put into the management plan in terms of the requirements for the development to meet.
Another question, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Mr. Russell, when Ellenbrook was developed, there was very much considerable concern about the impact on the Henley Brook, and a monitoring station was put on John Street to be able to monitor water flowing off into the Swan River. Do you think it would be possible for us to condition something of that level to be able to sustain a long-term monitoring of the water outflows?
Through Mr Deputy Mayor, as I've remarked many times in this chamber, the test for the application of conditions is threefold. Must satisfy a planning need, it must have a nexus with the development to which you're assigning the condition, and it must be reasonable. One of the great dangers in imposing planning conditions is over-grasping, trying to do too much to address a broader issue that doesn't singularly reside as the consequence of an individual development application. And now, as an observation, I think it's reasonably well known that much of the problems with the pollution of the Swan catchment has come not from necessarily from urban development, but some of the historic rural land uses that occur within the valley and further upstream. You could seek to impose a condition, but I think the danger is, Mr Deputy Mayor, you might be trying to shoot the moon to deal with a broader issue that goes way beyond the mere facts of this application. You only have to see there, of course, you have a major transport infrastructure in the Tonkin Highway extension, whose implications with respect to the environmental consequences to the water catchment area here would far exceed by a massive magnitude the potential impact of a singular service station or roadhouse, whichever way you want to call it.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Then, Councillor Johnson, I encourage you to speak with planning staff to formulate your motion. Moving on to the next item, 4.4, proposed educational establishment of a private primary school, lot 13, Stirling Crescent, Hazelmere. I have in-person deputation from Ms Tanamai Magnus. Thank you. You'll have 5 minutes for your deputation.
Good evening, councillors, Deputy Mayor and City staff. My name is Tanamai Magnus and I'm the principal of Helena River Steiner School. The City of Swan planners recommend that the council approve the educational establishment at lot 13 Stirling Crescent, Hazelmere, and I'm standing here tonight to support their recommendation and answer any questions councillors may have. Our school began from humble beginnings as a playgroup in 2014, a kindergarten in 2016, and a registered non-government school in 2018. Today we are educating approximately 100 students, and our numbers are increasing each term. We have been housed in leased properties in the heart of Midland, and we wish to remain as close as we can to our current location, whilst finding a permanent home with the space we require for student movement and activity, and for our school to grow. The proposed property in Hazelmere, a kilometre away, provides a far more secure and salubrious setting than where we presently are across the road from the courthouse and the police station. In 2018, we named our school Helena River Steiner School as the Helena River features strongly in our sense of place and identity. Steiner schools, also known as Waldorf schools, are co-educational and non-denominational. The aims of the pedagogical approach to educating children is for them to develop key skills in communication, collaboration, critical thinking and creativity, attributes identified in the Gonski II report as critical 21st century personal and professional competencies. Steiner education is over 100 years old and is the fastest growing alternative education movement globally. We aim to be reflective of the community in which we serve, and to that purpose we introduced Indigenous scholarships in 2019. Now a fifth of our student population is Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. We all know Midland is in a state of growth as part of the Metropolitan Redevelopment Authority's Midland Master Plan, and local primary schools are at capacity. Diverse educational choice enables families to choose the education for their children which aligns with their values, which fosters family participation and strengthens community. The addition of a school, centrally located next to the river after which it is named, has the potential to enliven the community and attract families to the city, while students have post-secondary options to continue their education at Midland institutions like TAFE and Curtin, Midland campus. Our school vision is, on Wajak Noongar Budja, guided for love of all life on earth, we strive to foster clear, enlightened thinking, warmth of feeling, and strength of will for good deeds and lifelong purpose. City staff have advised you that the proposed use of the land as a school is considered to be consistent with the Hazelmere Structure Plan. They are of the view that the potential for aircraft noise to adversely impact teaching is low, that they are satisfied that the proposed school will not cause adverse amenity impacts nor traffic congestion on the local road network. I ask you, on behalf of our board and all our parents and students who entrust the education of their children to us, to approve their recommendation. I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions? Being no questions, then I thank you for your time tonight and your deputation. I also note, councillors, there's a written submission in support from the Sterling Brass founders. Moving to item 4.5, proposed shop building on Strata Lot 1, number 53, the Crescent, Midland, and there is a written deputation from Mr Steve DeMole on that item. The next item is item 4.6, to amend aspects of development approval to include solar panels and 2 sheds, Swan Street East and East Street in Guildford. Councillor Johnson's leaving the room as he's got a proximity interest. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. And the first deputation is by Mr Ben Doyle from Planning Solutions in support of the recommendation. Mr Doyle, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to speak. Won't be anywhere near 5 minutes. This application is for 2 sheds which were previously approved on 2 occasions by council, but were inadvertently removed from the most recently approved plan. So it's essentially a reapproval of those sheds and some solar panels on the north-facing components of the roof. The officers have done a thorough assessment and written a report that I hope has everything you need, and we would ask that you approve it in accordance with that recommendation. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions, councillors? Being no questions, I thank you for your attendance and deputation, Mr Doyle. We can recall Councillor Johnson, please. Thank you, Councillor Parry. As you're taking your seats, I also note there's a written deputation from Michelle Lewis against the recommendation. And the next item on the agenda is item 4.8, proposed variations to deem to comply requirements of shed at lot 357 Petchy Road in Jane Brook. And there's an in-person deputation from Mr Gareth Faint in support of the recommendation. Mr Faint? Thank you. You'll have 5 minutes for your deputation.
Good evening to the CEO, Deputy Mayor and the City of Swan councillors. My name's Gareth Faint of 357 Peachy Road in Janebrook, and I'm here in person to reaffirm myself and my partner Emma Reid's support for the approval of the construction of a shed on our property. We've previously submitted a written letter of support for this matter, and I am present tonight to be available to answer any queries and concerns of the council.
Thank you. Councillor, are there any questions? No questions. I thank you for your attendance, Mr. Faint. You also notice that there's also a written deputation from Mr. Faint and his wife in support of the recommendation, councillors, which takes us to the next item. Item 4.9, a proposed patio in Darwell Way, Averley. It's on page 229 of the agenda, and have two written deputations, one from Mr. Prosper Chimanu against the recommendation, and one from the owner, Ms. Jade Howd, in support of the recommendation. So there's just two written deputations on that, councillors. Item 4.10 is a proposed single house at Liberty Crescent in Baskerville, and we have, it's on page 240 of the agenda. They have an in-person deputation from Mr. Jonathan Van Delden from Kings Road Construction in support of the recommendation. Jonathan here. Thank you. Once you start, you'll have 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors and Mayor and Deputy Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight, to be able to, just to speak. And basically, we are, as applicant, then we are seeking the council's approval to approve the proposed building relocation out of the building envelope in regards with the officer's recommendation set out in the letter there, or agenda. Basically, as this also then meets all relevant planning and requirements for this. Basically, the report also comes to this. It's also saying that there is also a less impact on the topography of the land itself with pushing the building further out of the building envelope. Our response to the neighbours' objections is also set out in our report then as well. Basically, it's the objection itself is not a determination of the application, but it's merely one of the factors that contribute to the assessing of the application. As noted, in the report, the neighbours' views will not be entirely blocked. They are still given sufficient opportunity for the views on their property, and it's also to be noted that they have also amended their building envelope and basically to get some of these views. Basically, the owners, Luke and Gemma, they are looking forward to enjoying and contributing to the Baskerville lifestyle and community with the building of their new home. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Van Delden, councillors?
Thank you.
No, then I thank you for your deputation. And I'll just note that the owners and builders, Luke and Gemma Maris, are here. If any questions come about, and Mr. Lyndon Reestmer from Kings Road Construction. Being no questions, you'll note that there is two written deputations from Mr. and Mrs. John and Karen Conradine against the recommendation. And that completes all the deputations for tonight, councillors. We'll move on to the next part of the agenda, 6.2, councillors' questions in regard to other items, before I go through the entire list to see if there's any withdrawals, modifications. So no other questions, councillors? Then we'll move on to the next part, and I'm going to start at the top of the run sheet. And item 13.12, use of portion of land for a cafe restaurant in Nangao Road, Lexia. No councillors. Item 2.1, policy review of social media. Councillor Johnson.
Likely to be an alternate motion on this one, Mr.
Thank you. if you can try and get that in as quickly as possible and work with the staff if you need to. Item 4.1, consideration of submissions for Tipper Court, Hazelmere, General Industrial to special use to facilitate a fuel-orientated commercial hub. No councillors. 4.2, we had a deputation on it tonight. It's the Adelaide Street, Hazelmere Rural to Light Industrial Restricted Use Overlay to the local road. Not withdrawn by anyone. Thank you. Item 4.3, Councillor Johnson, you have already given notice that you're going to make an amendment to that one. That's 4.3 on the Responsible Authority Report, Proposed Roadhouse, Neves Road, Bullsbrook. Item 4.4, the proposed establishment of private primary school, Stirling Crescent, Hazelmere. No one withdrawn it. Item 4.5, proposed shop building, the Crescent, Midland. Item 4.6, aspects to amend development approval to include solar panels and 2 sheds, Swan Street East and East Street in Guildford. Item 4.7, proposed shed, carport, secondary crossover, retaining walls and associated site works in Whitehall Road, Hazelmere. 4.8, proposed variations deemed to comply requirements of a shed in Petchy Road, Jane Brook. 4.9, proposed patio, Darwell Way in Averley. 4.10, proposed single house, Liberté Crescent in Baskerville. 4.11, statutory planning decisions under delegated authority. 5.1, proposed permanent road closure, portion of Mears Street in Guildford. 5.2, proposed dedication of 6 portions of land as road on Stock Road in Bullsbrook. 6.1, list of accounts paid August 2021. 6.2, financial management report for the period ending 31 July 2021.
Question, if I may.
Yes. Question, Councillor Henderson.
Page 305 at the bottom, it refers to, under arrow point 2, 60 days plus debtors increase due to government invoices moving from more than 30 days. Is this a trend that invoices are being paid later and later, or I thought there was a government policy to be paid in less than 30 days.
Ms Lay.
Through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, the City does follow up on these outstanding invoices, but you will note in previous monthly financial management reports that there is a bit of a trend where some invoices from state government departments are moving from 30 into 60, but we continue to follow them up.
Okay, so what financial impact does that have on us? Is it any significant financial impact?
Through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, it's not significant in terms of impacting the city's cash flows. However, we have prudent financial management processes, so we actively chase that up so it doesn't enter into the over 90 days. Okay,
thank you. Another question, if I may.
Yes, please continue.
Page 307, up the top. Fees and charges, there's a massive variation there under fees and charges, 850,000 nearly. Why is there such a significant variation?
Mr Deputy Mayor, I'll take that one on notice and provide a response to the councillors.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 6.5, annual review of estimates in the development contribution plans for South Bullsbrook Industrial and the Bullsbrook Residential Town Site and the capital expenditure plan for Bullsbrook. Then on to the notices of motion. Any councillor wishes to withdraw the notices of motions? There's one on the introduction of a petition, e-petition hosted by the City of Swan website. Councillor Johnson on 39 Byers Road in Midland. Councillor Scanlon about Greyhouse racing. Councillor Johnson request for the 2017 Jacobs traffic report. Councillor Jones installation of sporting, lighting and toilet facilities oval at the Allenbrook Secondary College. Councillor Johnson register of councillors' membership of political parties. Councillor Catalano at Lockridge Community Garden. And Councillor Catalano installation of all ages nature play space at Ottawa Park Beach Borough. Any questions on those, councillors? All the other items are in the confidential folder. Is there any need to go behind closed doors, or has anyone got any questions on those items? I think we're done, councillors. You got a question, Councillor McNamara?
It's a directional question, Mr. Mayor, looking for assistance. There's an item 13.3 in Part A of the agenda, which is going back for some time and hasn't been resolved. I'm after discussing with one of my fellow ward councillors, and would like to see this come back to council prior to the end of this session. And it's I may have a compromise motion that will satisfy all concerned. So if I was able to do that, I would really appreciate it. If I'm not, that's fine too. Thank you.
So I just want to clarify, that was 13.12?
13.3, Mr.
3,
Mayor.
sorry. That was in Part A, so if you can liaise with staff and we'll see how we go.
I'll have a chat with the ward councillors and the ward councillors that are actually affected by it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
A question of staff, Mayor, Deputy Mayor. Reed Highway is looking rather unkempt with a lot of turnip boyd and the like growing in the median strips. Is there some way we can talk to Main Roads about cleaning up this, which is going to turn into quite a significant fire risk?
If you liaise with Mr Coaten, I'm sure he'll send a letter. I thought you were going to say there's proliferation of election signs, but...
I think that's expected this time of the year. Thank you.
Being no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 6:52. I thank everyone for their attendance.
That's excellent.
But I